Go.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Killian, and I'm a member of the UCSB Communication Alumni Council. We're here today for the virtual career series. As most of you probably know, the Comm Alumni Council hosts these monthly series with different Comm alumni to give you an insight into their career, how they got there, what they took most from their time at UCSB and beyond. We are recording this session, so you can always go back and review this later on. During tonight's presentation, Kendra is going to give a rundown of her career and what she's been doing. And then we will open it up for a Q&A session. But if anybody has any questions along the way, please feel free to pop on or enter your questions into the chat. And just to, as everybody knows, we're here tonight with Kendra Miller, who's the Senior Brand Manager of International and Specialty at Sunbum. Kendra is a 2011 grad of UCSB. She majored in communication and had a sports management minor. And then before we turn it over to Kendra, I just wanted to remind everybody that we have Comm Career Day coming up in a short week and a half. You should have all received an email with signups on how to register. If you have not received that, please feel free to reach out to your professors or to the UCSB Comm Career Day Gmail account that is on the screen, and we'll be sure to get you all signed up. We're looking forward to it. This year, our theme is hitting your stride, and we have over 60 plus alumni signed up. So it's going to be a really exciting and informative day. And then as always, please stay in touch with UCSB Comm Council, Alumni Council for our monthly events, for our career day, and anything else that we're promoting at the time. And here are all of our social media accounts. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Kendra.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. Let me share my screen here. Cool. Just make it full screen. Okay, awesome. Everyone can see that, right? Okay, cool. So yeah, hi everyone. As Megan mentioned, my name is Kendra. I graduated in 2011 and have been working in marketing, brand marketing ever since. So I thought I would just give you guys a quick snapshot at my time at UCSB, a little bit of my career, and then I have some like thought starters and questions to get you guys going. So UCSB, definitely a lot of cheesy smiles here. I had an amazing time. I ended up doing 2 years. So I was a transfer student. So I was there for my junior, senior year. UCSB has an amazing transfer program. I loved it. I took the transfer classes and it felt like I was instantly part of the UCSB family, Gaucho right away. But while I was there, I did a lot of, I guess, internships, volunteer, anything that I could do around sports. So sports management was my minor, as Megan mentioned, obviously comm major. And then I got a language arts and behavioral sciences AA just because I took a lot of Spanish and my goal was to become fluent. But anyway, I did volunteer a lot in sports. It's always been my passion. I truly just wanted to be as exposed to that area of the business as possible. And I didn't know what was possible as far as a career in sports. I thought you had to be the announcer. I thought you had to be the television personality, and turns out there's a lot of other options, which I can talk to you all about. But a lot of that I also learned through these internships. So I interned with the athletics department. I am actually the person in that mascot uniform for the Foresters. Every intern did one game as the, I forget his name, but as the Foresters mascot. That was a fun experience. But More so with that one in particular, I really learned the different parts of a sports game that you can be in from a professional standpoint. We got to rotate against all the different roles and super eye-opening and really cool. Obviously, I loved marketing the most. So that was a continued theme for me. I was part of Lambda Pi Eta. And then yeah, that's me graduating. So a lot of involvement, anything I could sort of get my hands on. Anyone that had worked in sports before, I was doing quick informational meetings with them, which is just like quick 15-minute, hi, what do you do? Like just trying to get any information I could. So once I graduated, I actually moved to Los Angeles. I started in the film industry, nothing to do with sports, but a really, really awesome opportunity. I actually found that opportunity through going to the Comm alumni panel when I was there. And one of the alumni was a woman who headed up CBS Films, which is that company. She was amazing. I wanted to be her instantly. I said, that's the career I want. I want to model it after you, like be my mentor. So I went to all of her panels, every single one, and asked her questions afterwards. And she remembered me. She posted a job on LinkedIn for her company and for the company, and I applied and ended up getting it. So really cool to have a really awesome first start. I was with CBS Films for about 5.5 years. So really grew a lot there. Learned everything about the film industry. Happy to answer any questions about that. But it was a really, really cool, exciting time. It's a pretty intense industry, you know, it's very competitive. But there's a lot of fun opportunities to get to do. And that was probably the most research-based role that I've had so far. I started in media and research with them. And like the top picture you see there is a focus group that we did. And that's a panel with all the talent afterwards. So we would show the movie to an audience of recruits and we would ask them questions afterwards. And we would say, you know, what did you like? What did you not like? What did you think of this character? And we would actually make edits to the movie based on that feedback. So really cool process. I'm happy to dive into more, but that's really where my research brain got to be used right off the bat. My next role after those 5.5 years, I moved up to San Francisco, started working for the Golden State Warriors. This was my dream job. Finally in sports, I was in brand marketing, loved every second of it. I grew probably the most at this role. This was super pivotal. I had great managers, great mentors, and really got to stick my hand in a bunch of different kinds of projects. I was developing campaign briefs. I was working a lot like behind the scenes. As you can see in that next picture, I was doing media days, giving a lot of presentations, and it was a really exciting time. I was with them for 7 seasons, so about 6.5, almost 7 years. Recently made the move to San Diego. I've been there exactly a year this month, started working for Sunbum, really wanted to explore and continue to diversify my experience in marketing. And this is heavy in the what's called CPG, consumer product goods, or packaged goods, either one. It's really heavy in that role. And now I'm on the international marketing side, which is a whole different beast. It's really cool learning opportunity, but totally different when you're figuring out how to bring a US product to international audiences. Different cultures, different product, actually. Like we have to work on formulas and components and make them look totally different. So there's a lot of nuances that go into that. And a message will not always resonate the same way it does in the US somewhere else. So a lot of cool learnings there, but happy to, of course, later dive into any of these. But high level, that's been my career path so far. Want to quickly just touch on best advice I have for you guys. And it just comes with what I've learned and what I've done myself. And that's really just like getting as much experiences as you can while you're in college. Like any work experience truly helps because as a new graduate, we're looking for someone with a positive attitude, someone who shows respect and eagerness to learn and excitement and a passion for the role. And I think a lot of what you'll learn at your first role is very teachable. So just being that teachable, that sponge, is going to be huge. But any work experience you can get helps. It'll also help you just to try something. Like, do you like sports? Maybe you think you do and you try it and you're like, not for me. Maybe you like film, maybe media. Like, it's just a really great opportunity to try a bunch of different things while you're in college. And then as soon as you get into the workforce, like, you also aren't married to what you start with. And I think that's something I wish someone had told me, because I thought, because I started in film, I said, this is my career. This is what I'm going to do. There's one road, got to keep working my way up. And I can say now, 12, 13 years into it, that's not the case. Like, I found that I loved marketing through classes I took at UCSB. I just kept diving into it. And it was a very organic curiosity that I had about the field. One of the best things I learned is marketing is an umbrella. There is not one route to marketing. There's not one role in marketing. There are a million different ones. So I have that on the next slide, but this is probably a snapshot of my best advice. And I think the thing too is just to know that, like, you can do it. You're more ready than you think. It's very intimidating entering the workforce, but everyone who does is just as nervous as you are, and come with a good head on your shoulders and ready to learn, and you're ready. So I can open it up for questions, or I can start to go through some of these that I usually get from students, or things that I would have wanted to know, but I'm happy to open it up or just go through these. You let me know what you want me to do.
I think you take it away, Kendra.
Okay, I'll just keep going. So what do I look for when interviewing new grads for hire? I've actually had the opportunity to do a lot of interviewing in my past roles for people who would actually report into me, or would report into other departments within marketing. So my role at Warrior started as a project management role, moved into brand marketing. And as a project manager, you truly touch pretty much every single department, which means when someone's interviewing, you're a part of that interview process, because you're basically a part of every department. And so what I usually look for is kind of what I talked about earlier. Like, are you treating this as a very professional opportunity? Like, treat the people with respect, obviously, that you're interviewing with. I would say do your research. Definitely research the company ahead of time. If it's marketing, research any campaigns or initiatives that they've done. If they have any like community work that they're touting, a lot of this can just be found on the company website or the company socials. Maybe their LinkedIn, like, it's usually posted on there. Anything you can come with that shows, hey, I did my research and I'm not just looking for any job. I'm specifically interested in this job, and this is why, and here's the value I can bring. One thing I would encourage is also just be transparent about the areas you want to grow. That doesn't mean coming and saying, I don't know how to do any of this, even if that might be how you feel. They know your experience, but I think it's that transparency of like, these are areas of growth for me. Is there someone there that can teach that to me? And the answer is probably going to be yes. And then you can go from there. So that's a lot of what we look for in the new hires. And then any initiative that you took as far as internships, work experience, like just any sort of that like proactive go-getter, all of that will come through. So it really is, as much as we want as much technical skills, and that just makes the learning easier, it really is a lot of what we call like the soft skills too, that are really gonna set you apart. I'll share a quick story. In one of the interviews that I had, I was able to actually see sort of why I got hired afterwards. And part of it was qualifications, but this was, an early job for me. But part of it was like, oh, I think you're a good culture fit, which means they like your personality. Like, it really is that personable conversation that you can have with them that shows a genuine interest. And it goes a lot further than at least I thought it did in the beginning. And now being on the hiring side, I'm like, yes, that's huge, because a lot of times fresh out of college, you're coming with almost equal experience as a lot of your peers, you know, and so that's a really part that can set you apart and something that you can really own. So that's a big part of what we look for. Our internship's helpful. I would hope at this point you'd be like, yes, because I'm definitely touting them. It helped me twofold. It helped me from a work experience perspective without actually having to have a full-time job yet. And it helped me with just, what do I want to do? Do I like this? Do I not? Should I pivot? Should I keep going? And you'll meet so many people that are either your age and trying to figure out what they want to do too, or you'll network and you'll meet someone who maybe can help connect you someday or get you an opportunity or something like that. So there's absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain when it comes to internships and volunteering, and college has a wealth of those opportunities. I know UCSB does. I took advantages as many as I can. What roles are possible within marketing? So this is what I was starting to touch on a little bit earlier, is truly that marketing is like an umbrella. So I thought there was one role in marketing. You're the marketing coordinator. That's what you do. Like, but really, there's so many options. You can, like, I started as a project manager. I've done media and research. You can do it within a bunch of different fields. You can do social media. You can go into communications and public relations, which I dabbled in that a little bit. You can even go to the production side and say, I want to create movie trailers or TV spots. You can go to an agency and get a lot of great experience. You can do what they call going to the client side, which is what I was on, which is mainly the main brand. So there's a lot of opportunity. And I would say talk to companies about, or at least go on and look at job descriptions. You'll notice that a marketing coordinator at one place is going to be different day to day, maybe than a marketing coordinator at another place. So it's just good to gauge your interest. And I started by applying to a bunch of different roles that interested me. And then if I got an interview, I would take it very seriously. But part of it was me learning about that company and seeing, hey, is this the kind of company that I feel like I'd be a good fit for? Because one of the best advice I could give is you don't have to rush into anything. Obviously, you want to have, a career, start your career as soon as you can, but evaluate the opportunity for sure, because you will definitely spend a lot of time, putting yourself and your time into that role. So, day in the life, different at every single company I've ever been to and every day. I think that's something that's the beauty of marketing, and something that I really personally thrive off of is that each day is a new challenge. So I think it just depends on if we want to dive into any of the particular roles I had. I'm happy to share them. But it's definitely different based on where you work, what the season is, and initiatives that are occurring within the company. And
What's
oh,
your
go, yes.
current, I was gonna say, what's your current, like, kind of, no, there's no typical day, but in your
Yeah.
current job?
Yeah. So at Sunbum, currently really focused on, so my job is basically sort of split into, not equally, but split between this international marketing and specialty marketing. On the international side, it can be anything from new product development, which is working through formulas. And like if I want to bring a US formula to, say, the EU, there's going to be a lot of regulations and everything that go into that. If I see a US product that we have that I think will do great in the UK, okay, I'm pitching that out. I'm saying, hey, I've done an analysis of the cost here and the opportunity. I've worked with our sales team. I think it might be beneficial to bring this product to XYZ market. It can also be taking a US campaign, which is really our leader, since that's our main audience and where we got started, and thinking about, would this make sense for, say, Australia? Like, is the messaging good? Like, what's the timing? Their summer and their Skin Cancer Awareness Month is November. So I'm not going to roll it out the same time I would in the US. So there's a lot of sort of just strategic thinking, I would say, and a lot of just, coming up with a competitive too. what does this market already have? What's the white space in our lineup? You know, it's a lot of strategy, basically. And then on the specialty side, somewhat similar, but that's all US based. So what specialty is for us is like resorts, surf shops, like anything that's not super mass, like a Target or an Ulta or something like that. And it's thinking about like how to make those special because those are usually smaller, maybe independently owned, maybe mom and pop, maybe they've been with us since the very beginning. And we want to make sure that we have products specifically that make sense for them and we have campaigns that specifically work for them. So it's a lot of sort of tailoring rather than customizing, I guess, for that audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a really fun role. But yeah, I already shared kind of how like career day helped me. Um, Obviously how to prep, do your homework, look up. I'm sure you get a list maybe of who's going to be there ahead of time and take a look and see if any of their like LinkedIn profiles really resonate with you and why. I think the thing that stands out the most is if you're super genuine about your questions. Because likely that person in the moment isn't going to be able to say, hey, yes, let me get you a job today. Like, let's go. It's more about what you can glean from them. And just really trying to figure out, like, is this something that I would want to continue to learn about? And most of the time, and all the time, actually, they're going to be so willing to help. And that's a really cool opportunity. I was talking to Megan about this before, just it's difficult to like being on this end because there's so many students that you want to have that say informational with. You want to be able to carve out 15-20 minutes for every single student, but that's just not really the case if you have a full-time job and everything else. It's really hard to find that time. And so I think, I always respond really well when someone writes me an email, like a LinkedIn message and says, hey, your bio says this, or your work experience says, this is what I'm taking away from it. This is a specific question that I have. If I can just answer that on an email or something and we start the dialogue, that's definitely going to be lead a lot closer to maybe having that follow-up call or maybe like, you know what, this person's showing a lot of initiative. Let me really try to carve out some time, versus sort of a generic, hey, do you have any roles open? We do get that a lot. And the true honest answer to that is you have to go onto the career page for that company. That is how I got every single one of my jobs. Truly. It was not, hey, this person knows this person who got you an interview. It was either on LinkedIn or the company's career site. And so typically if someone says, hey, does Sunbum or Warriors have any openings? I'm like, I don't know. Go check the site and let me know if there's anything that interests you. And then, I'm happy to talk to you about what that role would entail and see if that's something that's a good fit. So just really doing that homework helps you stand out a lot. So that's good prep to do. And then the last one, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say we have a couple questions.
Oh, yay. Okay, great.
The first is you have had great bosses at big brands. Would you advise starting with a big brand with great leadership or trying a startup?
I would advise always starting with great leadership. But truthfully, that's not something you're probably going to know going into the role. That's something that you will figure out, and sort of hopefully work with that person, that mentor, that manager to become the mentor you want them to be. You're not always going to be like that perfect fit for another person as soon as you start working for them. And so it really is a collaboration of how do we work best together. And I'm not saying there's going to be anything abrasive in the beginning, but it really is sort of tailoring, like, what's their best communication style? Like, how do we work best together? Do they like when I email them or when I drop by their desk? Like, there's going to be so many things you learn. And so you can lean into good leadership, but you're probably not going to know that ahead of time. Definitely something you want to strive to find. And a lot of times you will, it's just, you won't know that ahead of time. What was the first part of that question though?
You had great bosses with
Oh, the
big brands.
small.
Yeah, small
Yeah.
or big.
So this is a question, this is a really good question. I've actually thought through this for myself when I was starting. I was like, okay, so I could either go to a startup and sort of be like, get more experience, like more well-rounded experience even, because okay, a small company, you're probably gonna have to wear a lot of hats, which means one day you're involved in social media, one day you're involved in brand strategy, one day you're involved in digital and emails, like you can kind of, with those companies, typically like craft your role and say, hey, I'm actually really interested in learning more about the email strategy or search engine optimization, like whatever it is that you're interested in, and you can dive more into it. So there's a lot of perks to starting with a smaller company. I did not set out to start at a bigger company. And to be honest, CBS Films, while it has the CBS name, was actually a very small internal crew. And so I kind of got the small company experience at a bigger company, if you will. They just had a bigger parent company, like CBS TV is the big one. Um, and so I would say you will get great experience at either small or big company. Sometimes at a big company, there are a lot of opportunities, but it's more within like this category and this role that you were hired for. But I've also been at big companies where I was just really vocal about, hey, I'm super interested in this. Can I take this on? Can someone mentor me? Or you at a big company, there's more people too to be like, that person's really cool. They're doing something that I'm interested in. Let me grab lunch with them. Let me grab coffee with them and just learn more about what they do. So there really are pros and cons, not even really cons. There are pros to both small and big companies. So I would say just go with a company that you feel good about in the beginning and you say, hey, I align with their mission and values. I'd love to learn more about this role. Go with it.
We have another question. Are there any keywords in a resume a hiring group looks for?
Oh, yes, there are. So that's a great question too. I love these questions. So what I actually do, little secret, I will go on and if I see a role I really want, I especially did this in the beginning, I would read their job description or I would ask for the job description. I'd read the role wherever you can get your hands on it. Usually it's just the job posting. I would tailor my resume based on that before I applied. So if a role says, I don't know, looking for hardworking, like self-starter, that has a focus on XYZ. If I have any experience in XYZ authentically, I am definitely going to highlight that. I'm going to move that bullet up to the top of the list of my, say it was an internship, and the little bio at the top, I'm going to put self-started, hardworking. Obviously, everything has to be authentic and true for yourself. You don't want to say something you're not just because that's what the job says, because you could get yourself into a position where you go, you said you knew how to do that. And you're like, I don't. But, it is actually really helpful just to think about, okay, if I'm the hiring manager here and this is what I have to look for, the job description. Oh, this candidate actually matches up a lot. They will do word searches and they will look at your resume and say, okay, they have 3/4 of what we're looking for. Let's talk to them. Don't be intimidated if you don't have all 100% of what the job description says. It's always worth applying in a conversation with that company.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I would add too, because a lot of times I think sometimes the hiring manager who you'll be working with and who is doing the initial pass are two
Yes.
different people. And
Yes.
who's doing the initial pass might not know the ins and outs. So all they're going off of are these keywords.
Such a good point. Yes. And that's so true. I've seen it because I've been the hiring manager working with, say, like the HR person. They're like, oh, this person looks great. And I'm like, I know, not really what I'm looking for. And then you kind of have to work with them to tailor what kind of candidates they're bringing you. So that's such a good point. Sometimes it doesn't totally align, but usually they're working close enough with the hiring manager, which in theory could be your new boss, if in case you aren't familiar with hiring manager, that's usually what that person is. And you can kind of reach a point where they both are on the same page what they're looking for. But yeah, initially, a lot of times it's someone who's maybe not in marketing, they're more in like people and culture. So great point.
Another question, how do you go about situations where you're in unfamiliar territory, like say a certain program or type of deliverable?
So like maybe I got asked to do something while I'm on the job and I was like, oh, I don't know what this is. Okay. Yes, this definitely has happened frequently. If you start a new job in a new industry, even like I did, like 12 years in, I was like, I'm gonna switch industry. And so a lot of the terminology was new for me. A lot of acronyms. Companies use a lot of acronyms. Some of them you can truly just Google. I'm not kidding. You will sit there and you go like, okay, what is this? What is this? Then you'll get a sense of it. Um, but the most important thing is especially when you are new, there is a tendency, and we've all done this, to go, yep, I know how to do that. Yep, I know how to do that. Nope, I'm good. Don't worry. Got it. Because you want to come across as I'm efficient. I'm great at my job. Da, da, da. But what's so, so important is that when you first start, you ask all those questions. Please, please, please ask the questions. If you don't know what something means, if you don't know how to do something, ask for clarification. There's definitely ways to ask that don't necessarily put yourself down. It's, hey, that's really interesting to me. Do you think you could expand a little bit on that? Or like, hey, I'm unsure what this means. I looked it up, took initiative. I looked it up and I saw that it meant that. Can you explain a little bit more in the context of this company what that looks like? Or what does success look like in this task that you asked me to do? Like there's a lot of ways to go about it where you can get more information without just going, huh? What? I don't know. I don't know what that is. And there's also a time and a place for that. But I think just showing that you took a little bit of initiative to do your research and say, hey, I just need more information to make sure I do this correctly. I really want to deliver the best deliverable, the best product to you. I think that's going to go a long way. So definitely ask the question. I did have somebody tell me one time, they're like, ask the questions now, because in a year, you shouldn't be asking the same questions. And I said, oh, okay, good to know. And that just kind of like encouraged me to just kind of rip the Band-Aid off in the beginning and be like, playing the new card. Can you explain to me what this means? And, more times than not, like they're going to be totally willing to take that time because you're being humble about it. You're, hey, I don't know this one. Help me out. And that's usually really well received.
On the flip side, have you ever had someone that was maybe working for you do that, or the opposite, kind of not be transparent about what they do or do not know?
Oh, have I had someone not be transparent? Not necessarily. Um, I've definitely had someone come in and be like, oh yeah, no, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. And then I'm like, you have taken on too much work for the deadlines that I have given you. I'm going to tell you that right now. There's no way that you can work the hour, like the set hours, not be working all this overtime. Like, let's reprioritize and go, okay, how about you have this to me by end of week, this by Tuesday, this by, like I've definitely had to sort of work with someone who came in extra eager and just wanted to be like, I can do it all today. And I'm like, you don't have to. And so I think there is a balance, and that's really just, I was just working with this person, they worked with their manager, and they just said, okay, yeah, that feels a lot more doable. You will get so much better quality of work from that person because they had the time to triple check, make sure there weren't any errors. They had time to put some maybe strategic thought into it if that was the ask. So yes, in that way I have. And then for myself, yeah, my first job, I was so ready to be like, I know how to do it. I know how to do it. And then I go back to my desk and like panic. So I only did that for a little while until I found the people who I could really ask questions to, because it's not always going to be your manager. Sometimes it's the assistant who's been there for 2 years. Hey, I kid you not, I had to ask this. What is the proper way to answer the phone here? Because it is different at every company. And I didn't have experience in this very corporate setting in how to properly answer the phone, take a message, like do all that stuff. Like it sounds small, But when you're sort of the front lines of communication for a big company, it's really important that you use the correct verbiage, because you can, in the role I was in, I could have been quoted as saying, oh, this company said this. Like, not all of them will be that front line of communication. But yeah, I asked other assistants who had been there for 2 years. I'm like, can we go to coffee? I just want to make sure that like I'm doing this right. Or what are some of the corporate speaks you use to basically not answer a question over the phone if it's a reporter? Like, there's just things that you learn, and people are always willing to help you because they had to learn them too. Like, they didn't come out of college knowing that necessarily. So the more you can just ask questions like that, the quicker you're kind of getting more confident and more up to speed.
Yep. The next question, I am currently working on a software startup and I would like to learn more about marketing. I don't really know where to begin from a B2B or a B2C side. Do you have any suggestions such as courses, videos, tools, etc.? I know this is kind of a loaded question, but I am just curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I kind of had this question asked to me by friends, actually. So I have friends who start their own companies, smaller companies, maybe even just like a one-person business. And they're like, what can I do from a marketing standpoint? It is a very, I would say, in-depth question. There's no formula. So there's not one size fits all, is what I mean by that. Like, a software company is going to be so different than someone who's maybe trying to sell their baked goods. Like, it's a totally different thing. What I would do, and this is definitely something that I asked those people to do before I started working with them, kind of consulting, I would have them put together a brief. And so the reason you want to put together a brief is it will help you focus. It will help you focus your mission, what you're trying to achieve, your timelines, maybe your budget, your core audience. There's so many things that you need to hone in on. The biggest thing that I see, and the biggest downfall from usually entrepreneurs trying to start their own company or their own brand or anything, is they want to do it all in the beginning. They see the end result and they say, okay, how do I do that right now? I want my social media channel. I want email. I want a distribution. I want this. You truly have to start at the beginning and then develop those things over time, because chances are, let's say social media was going to be your outlet for getting the word out there. If you started every social media account for your brand on the same day, there's no way you can upkeep all of those and retain an audience. So it's really important to look at a brief, and you can actually Google like a creative brief or brand brief. Something will come up 110%. If you look at a couple of them, you'll see that they're all pretty much the same questions. There's probably going to be like 5 questions. That will help you, if you can answer those, really narrow in on your brand, really narrow in on your product, and help you figure out why someone would need this product. What white space are you getting into? Like, what need are you fulfilling, and who would need that? Identifying that from the beginning, you'll be great. You have to have that focus and know that maybe your core audience for your messaging and for your marketing is this big in the beginning. That's great. Open the funnel later and kind of start to capture more and more. Because if you try to get everybody at the beginning, that's going to be really tough. Because you could dilute the message and people could be like, oh, I don't really understand why I need to engage with this brand. Like, what do they really need? Like, they're for this person and me? Like, that doesn't make sense. We all have different needs. There's a way to go about it that's so specific that someone will either instantly resonate with it or go, oh, not for me. You want the instant resonation because that's going to be a much higher conversion. So we use a term called like high funnel, low funnel. High is just your brand awareness. You will get into that part later. I would say identify everything first so you can really have like one sheet of, this is my mission, this is my timing. Then you can start going into step 1, step 2, step 3. But even at big brands, step 1 is a creative brief. We know who our company is, but we have to identify the timing, the budget, who our audience is, what the objective is, what need we're meeting, the current climate that you're releasing it in, how's this messaging going to come across with the market? Like, we have to identify that every single time we roll anything out. If you're starting your brand, it's no different. It'll be so good to have that focus point, and you'll benefit from it too.
And Kendra, when you were learning a lot of this, were you learning it through like just people you are working with? Are you part of any like trade associations, or I don't know, how do you stay on top of the latest and greatest?
Yeah. In Los Angeles, I was a part of like, what was it called? Women in Sports Entertainment, WISE. I was a part of another sports one. I just kept diving into those. And the chances of the people in those groups, because I was so new in my career, being more experienced was very high. So I met so many amazing women who were so willing to mentor me. Like, yeah, great. Like, there's this culture of women in sports too that's like, let me help bring you up. Like, this is a tough industry. Let me help connect you to whoever, talk to whoever, give you like what I learned in my first couple years. So I really learned a lot from them, and I think that was super beneficial as far as like the tactical, like how I learned maybe like how to do a brief or something like that. I learned that at Warriors. I had a manager that would write briefs, and I was like, that is cool. I want to do it. Please teach me. And I was nervous. I put myself out there and I said, can I take a stab at XYZ campaign? If you like it, great. If not, give me feedback. Like, I just want to try. And it stretched me a lot, but I had an amazing manager, and she was like, this is a great first pass. Let's work through it together. By the time I left, I was writing all the briefs. I was delegating people to write the briefs because I was like, I've done it. You can do it now. And I was passing on that knowledge, and so a lot of it you can learn from, your role, but a big part of marketing, and this is, I think, what you're getting at too, is looking at the competitive landscape. Who else is doing this? So like when I'm at Warriors, I'm looking at, maybe like a Nike. I'm looking at other sports teams. I'm looking at other sports and entertainment companies and seeing how they're talking about their Women's History Month or Women's Empowerment Month. I'm seeing how they're talking about. I'm also, meeting with we had employee resource groups within the company. And so I would meet with that resource group if they were the audience that I was going to write the brief for. And I would just ask them a bunch of questions. I mean, you're constantly learning. It never stops. And I love learning personally. I think I want to just always continue to grow, which is why I have switched industries so many times, because I was like, okay, I got it. I get this one. Let's try another one. Like, but it's all within marketing. So I still have that core focus, but growing that experience. And I would also say everyone at a company can be a resource to you. It does not have to be the CMO, the CEO, the top dog. I've seen that a lot with people who come in to the company and they only want to talk to that person because they're like, oh, well, they must know the most. They have a lot of experience and they know a lot, true. You can also get something from a peer, another coordinator, another assistant, from your manager, from, someone in another department. Like, everyone has a skill set that you can learn from. And eventually they'll be learning from you too. And so it's a pretty cool cycle that you can kind of go into. And that's another benefit of, a big company, but you can also find it at a small company. So lots of resources out there for sure.
Any other questions out there? Feel free to speak up.
Yeah, sorry, I actually had a question as well. So I know you talked about kind of identifying what sets your company apart from the other, like what other competitors are out there. So this is kind of diving more into your role at Sunbum. Would you say that just beyond addressing environmental concerns, would you say that your guys' Hawaii Act 104 Reef compliant and the Protect the Groms nonprofit, would you say that was beyond just a way to address environmental concerns, but also a way to kind of establish trust with the consumer by getting like the community involved? And was that your way of kind of like setting yourself apart from the rest of your competitors?
100%. Amazing. You did your research. High five to you. I absolutely love this question. And yes is the short answer. Um, Sunbum is a really unique company, which is why I love working for them, to be honest with you. They really root themselves in their beginnings. They focus heavily on their core. They focus super heavily on their brand values, what they stand for. Companies that they're going to collab with have to really make sense. Brand ambassadors have to really make sense. And they've evolved, but they haven't deviated from who they are. And their main mission is just to, end skin cancer. Like that's their main thing. And that is what they will stick to. I guess, will stick to until the end of time. And so part of that is really still staying close to community. You'll notice a lot of the brands that they partner with are all local to Encinitas. It's because that's our headquarters and that's where we're at. So we want to give that exposure to these other brands that are starting small or starting locally. Like it's really important. Like community is top priority for the company. So yeah, Protect the Groms is a big part of that. Like it aligns with our mission to help in, skin cancer. It aligns with community, also brings kids into it. There's so many things that it really strongly aligns with the brand. And it's actually one of the reasons I was drawn to the company, because I said, you have a bigger mission than just selling sunscreen. I was like, that's not even the top priority here. And I have seen that day after day at this company, the way decisions are made, like they're so true to their mission. And that's why things like the Hawaii Act and things like Protect the Grom are really in the forefront. But the cool part is you also don't see a lot of what they do because it's not for show. Like obviously they want to show like, hey, this is what we're doing, but you can go to a school and you can see like the shade coverings and like the bulk pump of sunscreen. They gave that to them. That's part of the initiative. And it's really more about moving the needle on skin cancer than it is about, hey, we have this community element. I've definitely seen companies where they have community initiatives and I'm like, how organic did that feel? Like from a consumer standpoint, not even speaking about the company. I'm sure it was organic for them, but we kind of look at it like, oh, that kind of does that feel like something that's part of their mission? How else do they show up? And so I think that's a really great way to look at a company and evaluate if that's something that you want to align with professionally. Especially as a marketer, you truly have to believe in what you're putting out there. If you don't, it comes through in the work that you do. And so I think Sunbum is one of those companies that's really, really good at bringing that into their interview process and just really making sure that that person is a good fit and is aligned with the bigger, objective and bigger values. So yes, 100% you're spot on.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good question.
Anyone
Anybody
else?
else? Any of them? Here, I'll bring pictures up. You want to in any of these pictures that you want to know about?
I have a question for you, Kendra. So
Sure.
you talked about, making connections and going into interviews prepared at the beginning of your career.
Yes.
Do those same skills, now that you have your job, do you still exercise those skills in order to,
Oh, absolutely.
well,
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, I love marketing. And obviously I'm just kind of getting started at Sunbum, but that doesn't mean that when I'm talking to someone else, I'm not thinking about, oh, like, what do you do? Like, how do you use your comm degree or whatever it is? Like, typically I'm talking to other like-minded individuals that have a career path similar to mine, just because I've always loved marketing. I want to do it forever and ever. Like brand marketing is it for me. So typically I'm talking to other brand marketers, but I meet a lot of people that are my counterparts at other companies just day to day on the job. I did a lot at Warriors, a lot at CBS. CBS, you're meeting with a lot of networks. So they have marketing and sales people. Warriors, you're meeting with everybody. So, it's one of those things where when someone sparks my interest, when I see what they're doing, I'll totally talk to them, and not from a standpoint of like, I want to do what you're doing today. It's more like, oh, why do you like doing what you're doing? What is it like? What does day to day look like? Like, what are the pros? What are the cons? Like, what do you like about it? And, how long have you been there? It's part of just also getting to know people. Um, and especially being in such a social job, it's just part of the job. Like, you want to have those connections with people because, for example, at Warriors, we did a lot of brand partnerships. So let's say I'm talking with another brand and I'm pitching them this marketing idea that I want them to fund. So you can see here, like I'm in front of the sign that says Empowered, presented by Rakuten. That's a platform for like, women's empowerment that we came up with. We pitched it to Rakuten and said, hey, would you guys be aligned from a company standpoint? Now, if I know the people who I'm talking to, it's so much more of a conversation rather than a corporate pitch, which when you're working with a platform like Empowered or working with Protect the Groms, it's so important to really understand the true mission because you want it to be this really organic, authentic fit. Your consumers will know if it's not. So I think just getting to know people because I like getting to know people. And then what comes out of that is sure, maybe they go to a different company at some point in your career. You're like, I have eyes on that. Let me talk to them. You never know how that's going to transpire, but you will learn something and you'll probably make a friend. And honestly, the job is so much easier when you have relationships with people. I have been told that at almost every single job I've had, like, hey, you're going to be working heavily with XYZ team. Make sure that you kind of take some time to have a real personable relationship, very professional, but very personable. And every company's a little bit different in that way, but go to coffee with somebody, eat your lunch together, or, just be like, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Like, it's just a little bit more of a person to person conversation interaction, and you will get much better products out of that. And you're honestly like, for me, I just enjoy my job more when I'm like, hey, how are you? How was your weekend? Like just having that, you spend so much time at work. So you definitely want to be, you know, good friends with the people you work with, and you might not always be at that company, and your network just grows and grows and grows. So it's something that kind of organically happens, but you do have to be intentional about it.
Yeah. We have two other questions in the
Okay.
chat. So
Cool.
do you have any suggestions for reaching out to people via LinkedIn? I am currently in a phase where I'm reaching out to people to schedule calls and meetings to gain more knowledge about the industry. I'm working on a winery reservation startup and I'm trying to expand my network in the process. Do you have any advice or strategies that you personally have used that work for gaining sort of those initial connections?
Yeah. So I think this is a little bit too what we were talking about earlier, but it's so hard to almost like cold call on LinkedIn because oh, you're raising your hand? Oh, um, so many people you'll get hit up a bunch on LinkedIn, just message after message after message. But I think, kind of what, Ava, I hope I said that correctly. Okay, kind of what she did, where it's like, hey, I noticed your company does this, this, and this. I have a specific question and interest, not so much to just say, I'm trying to grow my network. I want to add you. Not a lot usually comes out of that, but more, hey, I saw this. I saw this. I have a quick question. It's really important to start with like a quick question, write it out. You'll probably get an email response. It starts the dialogue. Like you really have to start from the beginning rather than the end of like, oh, now this is a connection I can lean on. It's like, it's the same thing I was just talking about, like developing that relationship. And sometimes people are going to be really receptive and sometimes people aren't because they're super busy, which is fine. But you will find those people who you kind of just genuinely have a connection with, and then great. And then maybe it does lead to a quick phone call and you get a little bit more personable with like, okay, now we've like heard each other's voices, like it's off of LinkedIn or, whatever. So I think it can always help just to kind of do your research, and not just look at it as like, I'm adding someone to my network. Here's another ad, but look at that person as an individual. Think about even if you were that person, what would kind of spark their interest? Oh, this person's, in the winery business. So am I. We all are. But oh, wait, they're trying to do this. That's kind of cool. Maybe they want to learn more about it. It goes both ways. So I just think there's little ways you can set yourself apart. And then just being super respectful about people's time, I think is always a good move.
Absolutely. Our last question. Do you mind talking about what you did during your time at the Warriors? How does it differ from your current role? And is there a main point that you have carried throughout all of your roles?
Wow. The Warriors was a lot because I was there for like 7 years. So, um, I did a lot there. Like I said, I started on project management and I was the project manager for our creative team with our corporate partnerships team. So it was a lot of like brand partnerships, working on marketing and strategy, how to combine two brands, which is what I actually learned from a class at Santa Barbara, about how to like combine brands. And it's super fun. I love it. I love researching a brand and another brand, like usually the one you're working for, and figuring out how you can combine the two in something that's engaging and interesting for a consumer. I love it. So I did a lot of that in the beginning, and then I moved more to the brand marketing side. That's like a lot of anywhere you see like the brand represented is kind of brand marketing. It's really hard to describe, but I guess I would say writing those campaign briefs, coming up with like Women's Empowerment Month campaign, Black History Month campaign, playoffs campaign, like these real campaign moments. That's a lot of brand. We worked on brand guidelines, which is a whole document that tells you, what font to use if you're creating the brand, what look the graphics are, the tone of voice, like there's so much that goes into brand marketing, and I raised my hand for a lot of it because there were just cool opportunities. And like the second picture here is a local artist that I was working with, and I briefed our studio team to interview her to get content for this empowered platform because she had helped design like a jersey. And so there's so many things that went into that role. The last one is media day. So you're coming up with, what questions do I need to ask? What content do I need to get from the players? Because I have to use that all season long on all my social channels. Like there's so much that goes into all of it. But yeah, to wrap it up, I would just say like the through line through all of them, gosh, they really are all building brands. So it's marketing at a high level, but it's really building the brand. Like you have to just immerse yourself in the brand. When I was at CBS Films, I wanted this film that we were going to release to be the best it could be. I wanted the trailers to be the best it could be. I wanted the press to talk about it in the best way possible. Like, what does that look like? Like, really just diving in. Then I moved to Warriors and I was like, okay, basketball team, sort of similar to actors when you have athletes, as far as like you're selling talent, really is what they call like the talent. But there was so much more to it because there was the basketball team, but then eventually there was Chase Center, which is a building. How do you give a voice to a building? But you have to create that affinity with the consumer. And the whole thing, I always tell people, I'm like, my job is to tell you what you think of the brand, like what you think of the company. So if I asked someone, I used to love doing this, I'd be like, okay, if you think of the Warriors, what are the first three words that come to mind? And my hope and prayer is that it was the three words I put in that brief said, humility, joy, all those kind of things. And more times than not, because we hammered home that message in a bunch of different ways, and it was so authentic, it still is authentic to the brand. That's what the consumer, thought of us and came to us for. So I think that's the biggest thing. And same thing with Sunbum. Like, what does the consumer think of when they think of Sunbum? Are they actually just thinking of sunscreen, or do they think of like a fun, a little bit offbeat, but with a big heart kind of, ape, monkey? Like, is that what they're thinking of? Like, what do they think of? What are those sentiments that they think of when they think of the brand? And that's really my role throughout all of it.
And sorry, one more thing. And that being said, like being I guess, the face of the company, being working with brand strategy, does that mean you work closely with like quality assurance to make sure that like any controversy that's going on with sunscreen, for example, like PFAS or benzene, um, how closely do you work with quality assurance to make sure that you're keeping up with these emerging scientists to make sure that like people still have a positive outlook on Sunbum? And like, who do these complaints go to, I guess?
Yeah. So there's a couple different teams. We have like a consumer engagement team. So we have a team that actually, they do a lot more than this, but part of their role is to monitor our Twitter, our email, our everything, just to see like, how are people talking about this product? You know, our social team does what we call social listening as well. So we're getting a lot of input similar to like CBS Films, we would do those focus groups. You're getting the input. So yes, it's super important that we listen to that. A lot of kind of what you're talking about is like maybe ingredient focused. So that will come from like a regulatory perspective. So we have an entire regulatory team to make sure we are compliant, to make sure we've got every single person every company who needs to check it off, because you'll see like little seals, basically little badges sort of on some of our products. That means we went through a whole process to get that seal of approval, to make sure it's a safe product, it's a compliant product. International, you do that over 1 million times over because it's different for every market. But yes, super important that we stay up to date in that way. You know, we're always evolving our product. We're always looking at, hey, how can we optimize the component, which is like what it comes in, or the IFC, which is the box it comes in, or the formula. Like, how can we continue to optimize those? Some of those are mandated regulations, and some of them are us just trying to optimize the product just to stay competitive, continue to give our consumers the best experience that we can. And then when it comes to like Warriors, there was a lot of social listening there too. Obviously, if we're releasing any kind of message from the brand voice, we want to make sure it's relevant to what's going on in the current climate. We want to make sure we're speaking to it, even though we probably started working on it 2 to 6 months in advance. It still has to be relevant when you release it. Sometimes there's pivoting that goes on there. So that's more messaging versus like ingredients. But yes, you're always keeping your ear to the ground, and there's people within companies that's their specific job, but we all kind of have that role to make sure we're listening and we're looking at the competitive landscape and just seeing how we can show up the best we can.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Wonderful. And we have one more question that slipped
Okay.
into the chat.
That's
You
fine.
mentioned earlier that you dabbled in the field of public relations, and I would like to know more, especially how it differs from brand marketing. And can I connect with you on LinkedIn if there isn't enough time?
Of course, definitely connect. You can find me on there. Public relations. So my experience is more through working with PR agencies. So we would hire public relations agencies to do that part of the role for us. So you'll see this like love the Coopers thing in the with the dog. So we hired a agency to help put on this event. They put on the event. It's a lot of work, a lot of detail. They're working on what media are going to attend this event, what editors are going to attend, maybe what influencers are going to attend. So we're working closely with them on that. We always filter those lists. I do the same thing now at Sunbum, and honestly, yeah, I've done it across the board actually at each role now that I think of it. Like every single one we're working with, it's either a creative agency, which is more like developing like campaigns and visual creative and graphics, or a PR agency, which is usually connecting you to media influencers. Sometimes you do influencer outreach internally, but a lot of times you'll rely on a service or an agency or something like that. PR is a pretty cool job. It is an always on job in my experience. And so you have to really, like, if a story breaks, so when I was at CBS, I was on the corporate communication side, which had some PR. We actually had a full PR team. But if a story broke at XYZ time and this in this market, you had to be on it. You have to read the article, make sure they're talking about your brand the way Ray, make sure all the information is correct, and then reach out to your agency or reach out to that editor if anything's not correct. So PR is really cool because it really is that voice. Now, brand marketing, on the other hand, it's still the voice of a company, and brand marketing will work with PR and a PR agency. Their roles are just sometimes slightly different. It really depends on the company and how they're structured and set up. A smaller company will usually, small and big companies use agencies, but a lot of times a smaller one will use an agency because they're just not staffed to do all that outreach and everything internally. But PR is a really cool, fast-paced job. You get a lot of great experience just because you're putting on so many different hats. Usually you're helping run the event, you're going through all the details, you're doing every last little thing, but you're also engaging with media. That's where relationships come in super handy. You're starting to develop a relationship with that media. Like I have a close friend who has worked in PR his whole life, and he is constantly just in the film industry, constantly outreach to different people. Hey, I have this actor, they just hired me for their film. I would love to get him on the Today Show. So he's reaching out to the Today Show. Hey, here's why you should have this person on, and pitching. And then you get to kind of come up with cool ideas too. Hey, I think we should do this event. Do you guys have the budget? Or do we have the budget? So it's very multifaceted. And it's going to be different at each company you work for, at least in my experience, but definitely a good way to kind of like get your foot in the door and get a lot of good experience and wear a lot of hats.
Excellent. Well, we're past the hour. We really appreciate you coming, Kendra.
Of course.
And for everybody joining us. We will have our final virtual career series next month. So be on the lookout for that invite. Otherwise, we really hope to see all of you at Comm Career Day on the 20th. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.